Buongiorno a tutti. Scusate, buongiorno a tutti. Sono Chantal Righini. Buongiorno a tutti, scusate, ho avuto un problema di trasmissione qua. Buongiorno a tutti e bentornati alle lingue live. Sono Chantal Righini e collaboro con la redazione di Rizzoli Languages. Ho preso parte alla realizzazione di Lead Hub, la letteratura inglese, e sono venuta così a conoscere, ho conosciuto Silvia Chini, che oggi ci parlerà come si possono integrare gli esercizi specifici per la certificazione IELTS e FIRST nella programmazione delle lezioni. Prima di dar la parola però a Silvia, vi darò alcune informazioni di tipo pratico. Per porre le domande vi dovete andare sulla pagina tuadomanda.it e inserire il codice di questo evento 8014, oppure potete inquadrare il QR code che vedete in alto, tuadomanda.it, e poi inserire il codice anche lì 8014. Un'altra informazione riguarda gli attestati di partecipazione. Questi saranno disponibili fra un paio di giorni sul sito della casa editrice alla pagina attestati. Per chi volesse invece accedere allo streaming ma in differita, l'attestato sarà disponibile solo ai partecipanti che avranno effettuato l'accesso dalla mail di conferma di iscrizione entro le 23:59 di oggi. Altrimenti questo video lo potrete sempre rivedere sul canale YouTube della casa editrice. Altra cosa che vorrei ricordarvi è che le slide sono sempre disponibili e sul sito della casa editrice nella sezione webinar. A questo punto saluto Silvia. Ciao Silvia.
Ciao Chantal, buongiorno.
Buongiorno. Allora, tu ci parlerai dei certificate e, come ho già preannunciato, come integrare durante l'anno esercizi diciamo di preparazione alla certificazione IELTS e FIRST. Lascio a te la parola.
Grazie. Good afternoon, everybody. It's always a pleasure to have time to share with you some ideas. But before sharing my ideas, I'm super interested in knowing some of your ideas. So there will be a short survey on the website mentimeter.com that you probably know because I talked about this website some time ago. What do you associate with exam preparation? I'm super interested. What are the first 3 things that you associate with exam preparation? If you go to the website and you use the code that you can see there, 94262928, you can share 3 ideas. This is a good tool. It's a free website, as you probably know, that you also can use with your students, especially the students who are in DAD. It's a good thing to make surveys and share opinions. And as you will see, once you send your answers, we will see a word cloud with the most, let's say, quoted words. Now we're waiting for your ideas. What do you associate with exam preparation? So in some cases, we associate anxiety because our students are always anxious. In other cases, we associate time-consuming activities. But before sharing my ideas, I'm really interested in knowing some of your ideas. Don't be shy. Go to the website www.menti.com. And if you use that code, thank you, study, that's a good starting point. And if you use the code that you can see there, you will be able to share your ideas, 3 each. Thank you, study. Well, for sure, that's a good starting point, as I said before. Thank you, certification, case, spill, speaking, interest. Yes, in some cases, our students are really interested. They need certificates for their future. Practice, of course, practice makes the master. Group work, that's an interesting thing. I 100% agree. Group work. No time, huh? You're right. 100% agree also with you. We have no time to do everything. This is one of the reasons why I've chosen this topic for this webinar, because I know we have no time to deal with everything. We have educazione civica, we have our programs, we have certificates, homework, that's good, many exercises, active listening, oh, that's good, thank you. Correction, exercises, good focus, motivation, challenge, it's a challenge, yes. Engagement, core, speaking. I agree with you all, basically. Stress, you're right. This colleague is right. Yes, stress for the students, but in some cases, even for the teachers. No time, then we have anxiety. Yes, I said it before, I mentioned it. Listening activity is good. Skills, you're right, 100% right. Interaction, I like this. Timing, fear, yes. Focus, achievements, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for cooperation. Thank you for cooperating. Integrated skills. Engagement. Yes, this is a huge problem. In some cases, students are interested, but let's be honest, the exercises are not so engaging. So thank you for sharing your ideas. Boring. You're right. In some cases, our students consider the preparation for exams boring. Yes, you're right. 100%. Correction. Thank you. So let's start sharing some ideas. Some time ago, I participated in a course and I heard the sentence that you will see in a second appearing on the screen. The sentence was that, let me check and let me see if I can put the presentation here with my slides. Thank you very much. Okay. And the sentence is, exam preparation is about teaching and not about testing. In the moment I wrote it down, I wrote this sentence down on my notebook, I immediately realized that I had to change the way I used to prepare my students for exams, for certificates. Because what they need for certificates is what they need in their everyday lives. It's what they need to write an email to a friend. It's what they need in everyday conversations. So I really wanted to try and change the way I prepared my students for exams. And you know what? It worked. So this is another reason why I've chosen this topic for our webinar. We know that there are a lot of certificates nowadays, and we know that now certificates are more important than ever for universities, for the year abroad, for our student CVs, or simply to place a milestone on the way, let's say. We have a lot of certificates available. We have the FCE, we have IELTS, we have CAE, we have Duolingo. Now we have this Duolingo that has appeared. I'm concentrating today on two of them, so FC and IELTS, because these are the most common. These are the certificates that our students need the most. And we will deal with some ideas on how to integrate the preparation for these certificates in our daily lessons. So yes, it will be a curricular activity with some extracurricular lessons at the end, just to practice and to practice the last things. It's not meant to work 100% with every single class. I want to be honest with you, but we know every single class is different. So let's start with FC. You know the format: speaking, use of English and reading, listening and writing. FC is probably the most required certificate in our schools, and we tend to prepare every student for FCE. Let's start with FC speaking. You know that part one is formed by some questions, general questions about the city, hobbies, and other things. Part two is the two pictures you can see here, and the students are asked to describe, compare, contrast, answer, and guess something about the pictures. And part three, that's a dialogue. And the skills required are interaction and cooperation. When we want our students to practice for these papers, for this paper 2 and 3, so for the speaking part 2 and 3, I generally used to look for past exams online, or we tend to look for some files on internet, without sometimes realizing that our textbooks are perfect to help us preparing our students for this part of the test, of this exam, practicing for this paper. In this slide, you can see some pictures I've taken from various books. I'm not saying that one book is better than the other to do this. I'm saying that you can use the book you're using in class. I've taken some pictures from a book for ESL, of course, but also the last one, it's from LITAB, so literature, nothing to do with certificates. But you will see that these pictures are perfect to practice and to help your students working on the skills required for the FC speaking. So let's start with task number 2. Starting from the pictures I've taken from the various books or from your books, you can do the following activities. Let's start with lower levels. And you can start in prima, you can start at the beginning of prima. I'm just giving you some ideas, okay? Then you can pick something here and there and use and try it out with your classes. So for lower levels, you can start with a brainstorming, okay? Brainstorming, you can start from a picture and you can ask your students to brainstorm and to write the words they know, okay? Or you can use brainstorming, starting from pictures, to revise vocabulary, for example, after teaching vocabulary about traveling. I don't know, you can give your students a picture, you can take a picture from your book, from the unit you're dealing with, and you can ask them to brainstorm. You can transform this exercise into a challenge. So you can give them 1 minute, 2 minutes, and they can work in pairs, for example, and ask them to find at least 10 words, for example, in 1 minute. And this can be done even with lower levels. Also with lower levels, you can play something, you can give them an exercise like question and answer. So you can let them work in pairs. Okay, you let them work in pairs, and one writes the questions and the other answers the questions. In this way, they not just practice answering questions, but they also practice writing questions. Okay, so it's something even more interesting for them because they prepare questions for their classmates. Or for all levels, I would say, you can use pictures to teach grammar. When you teach grammar, when you revise grammar, you can use pictures. If you type on Google busy pictures, okay, you will be rewarded with a lot of action-packed images. And these are ideal for classroom use, basically. Here you can see the 4 pictures I've found online. And you will have a lot of material to teach prepositions, verb tenses, some different sentence types, for example, negative sentences, positive sentences, or questions. So you can start by using the pictures you find online, typing busy pictures, and then you can move to the pictures you have on your books. So for example, the second picture, if you're practicing present continuous, you can ask your students to describe the picture using present continuous. And this way, they will practice some skills, okay? They will gain some skills useful for the test, the exam, of course, but then they will also practice things and skills useful for everyday life. For higher levels, you can also have some expansion activities. For example, the 2 pictures taken from LITAB, they, as you can see, they show some scenes of the Victorian period, Victorian age, 2 completely different scenes, 2 completely different environments, and 2 completely different social classes. So you can ask your students with higher levels to compare and contrast these 2 pictures and to try and guess or to try and find clues that support their ideas. Okay, what can you guess from the picture? What can you understand from the picture and why? This is great. This is useful both for the FCE speaking part too, but also for everyday life, as I said before. These are just some hints. I'm not saying that preparing for English certificate is not about practice, but it's mainly about teaching. and also then about practice. But you can put some of these activities, you can organize your lessons with some of these activities, and you will see that the preparation will be easier and more engaging, because you do not start from scratch at the end of the year. Okay, let's organize 5, 6, 7 lesson, practice, and then we have the FCE. But your students will gain some competencies, some skills, starting from the beginning of the first year, because you see some activities are perfect even for lower levels, and then up to the end of the first, the second, when you decide, you can practice a bit and let them have their FCE exam. Let's move on. This is something extra I want to share with you. It's just an extra hint. When I want them to practice questions, I generally use guess who or guess what. It's the way I used to practice questions with lower levels, using a different way. This is useful because you always need different sentence types when you have your FCE exam. But it was just an extra idea I wanted to share with you. Let's move to part 3. Part 3 of the speaking test is more complicated, is more difficult, to be honest. So part 3 is a conversation. Okay, candidates, as you know, are asked to interact with each other rather than speak by themselves. It is essential to agree, disagree, reach an agreement, ask for opinions. In the end, they should reach an agreement. It's not compulsory, for example, in this case. And of course, this task is more difficult because they need more skills. More skills are involved at the same time. So it's almost impossible to start at the beginning of the first year, to be honest. But towards the end of the first year, beginning of the second year, you can introduce the pyramid discussion. This is something I find really interesting and students find really engaging. Basically, this is an activity in which students start working in pairs and they form progressively larger groups. They are required to reach an agreement before joining the larger group. So they start working in pairs, an easy conversation. Okay, there are 2 of them, and then they join larger groups. So after teaching, for example, expressions to agree or disagree, turn taking, give an opinion, you can try this activity. Okay, ask them to reach an agreement on the importance, for example, of inventions. Okay. Which one of these inventions, you can ask, is the most important for you? Why? Okay. Once they've reached an agreement, they form groups of 4. Once they reach an agreement in the group of 4, they form groups of 8, and so on. What are the benefits? They interact, first of all. They keep on repeating their reasons several times. So they keep repeating the expressions to agree, to disagree, to ask for an opinion several times. And this is useful. This is great because once they use them for 4, 5, 6 times in a row, they will memorize them. And it will be easier for them dealing with speaking part number 3. Of course, they need to understand the complex word of turn taking. Okay. And this is good. This exercise, this activity is really good because once again, they start working in 2, then in groups of 4, then in groups of 8, and they keep repeating the same structures. So once they've learned how to take turn, it will be easier for them once again to deal with part 3 of the FCE speaking exam. You can organize a pyramid discussion on everything. The benefits of traveling, important inventions in everyday life, as you can see in the slide, health, food, everything. So it can be useful even for lower levels. As I said before, not at the beginning of the first year, because of course it's more difficult than describing a picture or comparing and contrasting. But towards the end of the first, beginning of the second, it's possible at least to start, okay, giving your students this activity and help them practice for speaking part 3. Let's move to writing. We know that there are 2 parts for this writing, and our students are required to write essays, articles, reviews, reports, emails, and other things. For emails and lower levels, there's something that I consider super useful, and it's the pen pal activity. You have a website here at the bottom of the slide. It's a website created by University of Cambridge. You can register your school, and you can find pen pals. You can find other students of other registered schools, so it's safe. Okay, to start with this activity of pen friends. Okay, your students write emails. You can agree. I did it last year with my prime. You, of course, you meet. Okay, you can have a call, conference call, or you can send an email to the teacher of the other school, and you can reach an agreement on the topics to cover, on the things you ask to your students. This is great to start. So you can teach in class how to write an email, the different parts, and then students can start writing. It's great because you can take some topics from your textbook. You can follow the textbook. So if you're practicing food, if your unit is about food, you can ask your students to write food and to exchange ideas and opinions and traditions. So culture, different cultures, different food. So you can follow your textbook. You can give your students the possibility to write, to speak to another student, so to another teenager. So of course, this is an engaging activity. And they're free, basically. They're free to say whatever they want, more or less. Okay, so they know they have a topic, they know they have a theme to follow, but they're free to deal with the situation in the way they prefer. And once a month, once every 2 months, then you can decide with the other teacher. You basically collect. You can ask your students to say something, to tell something in class about their pen pals, their friends, and what they've learned about the other culture. If you choose a school, for example, that is on the other side of the world. Okay, last year I've chosen a school in Russia, so it was quite interesting to see the differences, especially for food and festivities. And it's also useful because they learn how to write. Of course, there will be grammar mistakes, okay, but it's good practice, and it's also good fun, great fun for them. For the second part, there are various options to include FC preparation in daily lessons. So you have here a website, which is Write and Improve. Okay, Write and Improve is a free online tool. Okay, it has been developed by the University of Cambridge, once again. And this is a tool to help English learners improve their writing skills. So basically, you can choose your level. Okay, beginner, intermediate, advanced. There are 3 levels. And once you've chosen your level, you receive a selection of writing tasks that match that level, of course. And for example, for the beginner level, there are a lot of emails. Okay, so perfect even for task number 1. Once the task has been submitted, so you get the task, you get the prompt, you start writing directly on the website, and you submit what you've written. Once the task has been submitted, the tool assigns a grade and gives a feedback in terms of grammar, syntax, and vocabulary. Okay, this is also good for intermediate levels. Okay, I would suggest not to use it for advanced levels because even the tasks related to the last level are quite easy, in my opinion. But for beginners and intermediate, it's great because they have your students have the possibility to write on the website and they get an immediate feedback. For higher levels, you can have a class blog. Okay, and the class blog can follow your textbook. And even, for example, we've spoken some months ago about Educazione Civica. So this blog can be used for basically everything. Okay, this is the example you have here in the slide is Padlet, but it's just one of the many possibilities we have. Padlet is great, it's free, and it's basically a virtual wall, and your students can share what they write. You can ask them to write newspaper articles, you can ask them to write essays or stories or reviews, and you can use that as a class blog. Okay, This is something great because if you find a topic, okay, for example, if you're dealing with a unit on food, I always make the same example, food, okay, you can ask your students to write, for example, something about traditional food that they generally eat for specific festivities, for Christmas or other things, okay, and it's suitable for lower levels and higher levels. You can ask your students to write newspaper articles if you focus on newspaper articles. For example, this year, 2022, is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So why not letting your students investigate and write something about Platinum Jubilee, so newspaper articles on that? So it's a great tool. And for students, it's more engaging, okay, than simply practicing and giving them a prompt from the FCE past exams. I want to show you this because unexpectedly, this is an idea that is working with my secondo. Unexpectedly, I'm saying unexpectedly. Yes, I didn't expect this to work in this way. This is Bookflix. I started this because I wanted them to practice writing reviews. Okay, you know that one of the things you're required for FCE writing is reviews. So we've decided to have this Bookflix. Basically, the concept is the same of Netflix, but with books. The books I started with the books they had to read for English classes, but also for Italian classes and French and Spanish, so the second language. We've chosen 3 categories, as you can see, and these are the same you find on Netflix. So trending now, top picks for you, and new releases. And students write book reviews, but also teachers can contribute. And now you see the covers of the book, but at the back, if you turn the cover, there are the reviews written by students. And with this Bookflix, so first of all, students feel engaged because they want to put their book on this Bookflix. They want to show other students, other classmates that they've read this book, they had the review, they wrote the review, they've written, the review, and the cover is there. But it's also a different way because sometimes we just need to find different ways to do the usual things to give a bit of innovation in our lessons, okay? So this is something that is working, and students are happy to write reviews, and we were planning to do something like that even for restaurants and websites, okay? Yes, it's time consuming. I know that one of the questions will be, is it time consuming? Yes, because you need to prepare everything. You need students to work in a specific way. But it's great fun, absolutely. Taking into consideration the reading paper, you know that there are different exercises. And to be 100% honest with you, I think we can use the saying practice makes the master in this case. And what can we do to help our students become mastering these techniques? We can ask them to read what they like, okay? So I usually read a newspaper in class once a month, okay? It used to be the paper one, now it's the online version, of course. From prima to quarta, we read a newspaper in class more or less once a month. And at the very beginning, of course, we focus on pictures. So once again, we practice skills for the speaking part. And then we start focusing on newspaper articles. And this way, students will understand how to write a newspaper article. This is good for the writing part. And at the same time, they learn new words, new vocabulary, new phrases, new structures. Of course, the suggestion is, okay, let's use real news, okay, things that are real. And but there's a problem that in some cases we do not know whether the text is appropriate or not for the level of our students. So you can use Text Analyzer. It's a website. If you copy and paste the text you want to give your students, that website gives you the most frequent words, phrases, sentence structures, so that you will be able to understand if it's okay for your students or not. In other cases, in other lessons, you can also use, for example, the British Council magazine, and news are divided per level. So you find news for beginners, news for intermediate levels, and news for higher levels. This is a good way even to integrate educazione civica, exam preparation, and our daily classes, daily lesson plans. Because reading newspaper articles for educazione civica, we all know we have to deal with this it's not new, with this subject. Reading newspaper articles for educazione civica will also help them understand the structure of newspaper articles. So you can mix the two things. And last but not least, use of English. Okay, the first thing to say is that use of English, that is to say vocabulary, grammar structures, is everywhere. Okay, when we read a newspaper article, you know it. When we read a newspaper article, when we listen to a podcast, and all other things. So for collocations, we can use taboo, or synonyms. We can use taboo. We can play taboo, let's say 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of every lesson. Okay, that's great fun, and this helps students. And the most difficult part of the lesson, which is the last 10 minutes, concentrating on something that they like, because they generally like playing taboo. Or we can once again go back to pictures, what I said at the beginning. So using the busy pictures found in Google to practice grammar structures, basically. Or there's a nice website, a good website, Learn English with TV series. There's a picture of The Simpsons. This is a website that gives the possibility to teach grammar structures using TV series. And in some cases, you also find the exercises related to the TV series you're watching. In the last part of this webinar, I would like to say something even about IELTS. IELTS is now useful for our students for university, okay? And it's different. It's completely different, as you know, a completely different certificate. But let's consider something, not every single paper, but let's consider something. First of all, the speaking. Speaking is also divided in different parts. This is the speaking part 2, which is the monster, let's say, of IELTS exam. With speaking part 2, students are given a cue card, like the ones you see here on the screen, and they are asked to speak for 2 minutes about the topic given. There are some things, some questions, and they have to cover every single point in 2 minutes. So our students generally, and we in some cases, tend to think that these cue cards, this part is the most difficult part of the speaking exam, the speaking paper. But we do not realize that these cue cards are a precious, really, resource we have to start practicing even at the beginning of Prima. So you can use these cue cards, you can create some cue cards to revise at the end of each unit. And as you can see, these are not super complicated topics. For example, are you dealing with traveling? In this case, I've taken the first page of Unit 5 of this book. It's about traveling. You can use the cue card about traveling, journeys, holidays, future and past holidays at the end of this unit. If you have lower level students, you can give the cue card the lesson before, and you can ask them to prepare and speak for 2 minutes for the next lesson. And this way, they will revise grammar structures. They will revise, for example, if like this one, it's describe a journey you went on. So of course, they revise past tenses. And there are some related to future holidays. So of course, they revise future tenses. They revise vocabulary. So it's a great way to revise vocabulary, even if you're not preparing your students for IELTS. But it's something I use a lot, even in Prima. In Prima, for example, we can ask them, there are a lot of cue cards, easy cue cards, to speak about a particular sport, hobby, or places they like to go with friends, and other things. So it can be used as homework, it can be used as a revision, it can be used as an oral mark to test vocabulary and grammar. Why not? So after giving your students the possibility to practice a little bit, it can be used. I use it in some cases for oral marks. Or for lower levels, you can ask them to start speaking for 1 minute, and not 2. And then you will ask them to speak for 2 minutes the year after, when you think they're ready. So it's a great source of inspiration. This cue card is something great. And you can invent, of course, your cue cards. For higher levels, if you have higher levels for this part of speaking, you can ask them to create some podcasts. Podcasts, 2 minutes podcasts on the topic you prefer, on the topic you're dealing with in your unit, the unit you want to take into consideration. The two apps you see there, Red Circle and Active Presenter, are two good websites and apps as well to help your students with the speaking, with this part of speaking for IELTS, but for speaking in general. So Red Circle is a free podcast hosting platform. So you can ask them to create some podcasts and you can share podcasts with other students, with other classes. Active Presenter is a video editor, basically, a video editing platform. I use Active Presenter, but to be honest, you can use Movie Maker, you can use whatever you want. What I generally do is asking my students, generally, yes, in the fourth year or at the beginning of the fifth, to create some short presentations, so 2 minutes maximum, for their schoolmates in attending the second year. Okay. In some cases, I choose a grammar topic. In other cases, I choose something for educazione civica. In other cases, I might choose, for example, now I've chosen the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So you give them a topic and you ask them to create active presentations, so short presentations, 2 minutes maximum, for their schoolmates. This is engaging because they know they're working for somebody else, not just for the teacher, not just to be graded, but they work for somebody else. They really appreciate this task. At the same time, they're practicing and helping other schoolmates. So it's a good activity. It's a good thing you can take into consideration. Let's move to writing. We have 10 minutes, yes. Let's move to writing. As you know, writing for IELTS is divided into two parts. So IELTS writing task 1. This is IELTS writing task 1. Students are giving a graph, a chart, a pie chart, a bar graph, whatever. And in 150 words, they need to describe this graph. So it's not the usual essay. This is quite tricky. This requires practice. And there are a couple of things that can be taken into consideration to practice this in our daily lessons. So the first is a drawing activity. So you give the graph just to one of your students and you ask him to describe the graph to one of his classmates. And the other classmate has to draw the graph. So this is a good starting point to start because they need to realize what they have to do. So this is a good starting point. But if you need to integrate educazione civica, IELTS preparation, and your daily English lesson, you can use the website for the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, because that website is full of graphs. So if you take one of the goals, okay, you have minimum 5 or 6 graphs, bar graphs, pie charts, every type of graph or diagram. And you can use them to speak about educazione civica, but to help them practicing for their IELTS. So it's a bit time consuming for you, yes, of course, because it requires research, of course. But then it's a good mix of exam preparation and educazione civica and content, I mean. For task 2, it's an essay. The main problem is that they don't have time because they only have 40 minutes for this essay. So to help them practicing, you can create a class newspaper, online class newspaper. You can use Canva, you can use Story Jumper. These are just two different possibilities. But helping them writing essays on topics they like and they want to write about. Because as you know, the topics given for IELTS can vary from, let's say, overpopulation or immigration or sports, hobbies. So you can ask them to choose something they like and to write an essay on what they like, just to practice. Last but not least, listening. Okay, listening. Even here, the listening paper is divided into 4 exercises. The first one, to be honest, is quite easy. They're required to write some names. In some cases, they spell some names and they have to write them, or some numbers. For part 2, 3, and 4, it's, let's say, more complicated, more difficult. Part 3 and 4 especially, these are considered academic conversations, okay? The first one is general conversation, the other one is a monologue, so a university lecture generally. And to help your students, to work with your students for IELTS listening task 3 and task 4, you can use ESL videos. So it's a website, it's a nice website with videos for different levels with exercises. Or you can use Radio Garden. This is something my students really like. Radio Garden is basically live radio from all over the world. So you can listen to live radio broadcasts from all over the world, and you can work on them. So just to get them used, you know, to the language. And here in the first one, ESL video, you also have academic videos. There are a lot of open universities now and a lot of university courses, even online. If you find something, if you find a topic, if you find a theme that your students are interested in, you can choose that one. Because the most important thing is matching the needs of our students with what the exam requires. But it's not impossible. Integrating exam preparation in our daily lessons is not impossible. Then, of course, if you want to practice, you need some lessons specifically for IELTS or FC. But integrating the preparation for exams in our daily lessons is not impossible. And for the evaluation, you know it, you can use the public evaluation grades given by IELTS or FC, or as we said in other webinars, you can use your own grid according to the level of your students. And it will be a success. 100% satisfaction, probably not, okay, but 100% engagement, probably yes. So I hope that you found some of these ideas useful. And of course, it's not meant, as I said at the beginning, to work 100% in every single class. But if you pick some ideas here and there and you put these ideas into your lessons, you will help your students practicing in our daily lessons. Thank you.
Grazie Silvia, grazie, è stato veramente molto interessante. Ho qui una serie di domande per te. Innanzitutto le prime riguardano il sito, quello di cui ti riferivi in merito a University of Cambridge.
Sì, per il Penpal Activity?
Sì, vorrebbero sapere esattamente
Allora, il sito è nella slide, quindi poi possono fare semplicemente copia e incolla. Bisogna registrare la scuola, bisogna dire il numero degli studenti, bisogna dire il livello degli studenti e poi si può essere, diciamo, matchati con un'altra scuola che ha più o meno lo stesso numero. Ecco, ma quando l'ho fatto io mi hanno dato 2 o 3 possibilità e io poi ho scelto, poi ovviamente mi sono messa in contatto prima con l'insegnante dell'altra scuola, abbiamo deciso su cosa lavorare, in quel caso erano delle prime, comunque anche se non prime avevano lo stesso livello, ecco, e quindi abbiamo lavorato su sport, hobby and sport, abbiamo lavorato su festivities, abbiamo lavorato su food, e poi siccome giustamente i ragazzi ci hanno chiesto anche di essere lasciati liberi per un attimo per parlare, per scriversi con i corrispettivi compagni dall'altra parte del mondo, li abbiamo lasciati per 2 o 3 settimane liberi di scriversi, ecco, quello che volevano, quindi si sono raccontati cose varie, che però assolutamente è tutta pratica, quindi va benissimo, ecco. Poi più o meno una volta al mese facevamo un'attività di raccolta, perché ovvio gli errori di grammatica non sempre vengono corretti, soprattutto se ci si abbina a una classe che non è madrelingua inglese, quindi gli errori di grammatica ci sono, quindi insieme vedevamo cosa sistemare, cosa fare, però devo dire che tra di loro si sono aiutati anche, perché un po' i miei chiedevano a me, un po' i ragazzi di là chiedevano alla loro prof, quindi ecco, si sono aiutati anche tra di loro.
Bene. Una domanda che riguarda il practicing writing skills at higher level than intermediate. Quali consigli ti senti di dare?
Allora, se parliamo di practicing writing skills in generale, allora partiamo dall'altro. Se parliamo di practicing skills a higher level per l'IELTS, ci sono tutti dei particolari accorgimenti. Adesso molto spesso gli studenti chiedono di poter lavorare per raggiungere una certa valutazione nel writing, perché le università chiedono un punteggio dell'IELTS con almeno 7, 7,5 nel writing. Quindi se si lavora proprio per quello, per quella cosa specifica, ci sono tutti degli accorgimenti che si trovano tranquillissimamente online. Altrimenti devo dire che con le mie classi più, diciamo, alte funziona benissimo il blog di classe e funziona anche molto bene la newsletter, quindi vabbè, class newspaper oppure newsletter. Perché io credo, perché comunque loro sanno di essere letti non solo dall'insegnante per avere il feedback o la valutazione che sia. Questa class newsletter è una class newsletter che poi leggono anche altre classi. Quindi ci sono cose particolari, soprattutto, non so, per esempio allo scientifico, se qualcuno è interessato in una determinata cosa, magari che hanno fatto in scienze, in fisica, così, allora può scrivere di quella determinata cosa. Altre volte invece sono io a dare un tema per tutti. Però devo dire che il denominatore comune, diciamo, è l'essere letti non solo dall'insegnante, cioè il far sì che questa cosa sia utile o comunque sia vista anche da qualcun altro, non sia solo finalizzata ad avere il feedback o il voto. Ecco perché anche parlavo quelle flash presentations, l'abbiamo fatto proprio prima di Natale, proprio per educazione civica. I miei ragazzi di quinta hanno fatto delle presentazioni lampo usando o quel sito, quell'applicazione che vi ho fatto vedere, oppure anche semplicemente Movie Maker, sulla storia dell'Unione Europea. E quindi poi queste presentazioni lampo sono state usate dal collega di geografia nelle classi seconde per appunto spiegare la storia dell'Unione Europea. Abbiamo fatto questo match e devo dire che la cosa diciamo è stata molto apprezzata, perché poi i ragazzi di seconda hanno detto ai ragazzi di quinta abbiamo visto i vostri video così, quindi loro si sono molto impegnati a fare questo, molto più che quando diciamo la cosa è finalizzata solo al mandarlo alla prof e avere il voto.
Bene. Un altro commento, anche qui una domanda, ma che chiede, diciamo, vuole chiedere un aiuto per come procedere nell'insegnamento del listening. What about listening? I find listening the most difficult skill to teach. Dunque, che
Sì.
cosa fare per sostenere, per dare un sostegno e insegnare?
Certo, allora sicuramente la bacchetta magica non c'è. Quello che noi vediamo nel nostro piccolo in classe è che sicuramente, utilizzare costantemente la lingua inglese fin dal giorno 0, è la chiave anche per chi, fa veramente fatica. Poi piano piano, prendere cose, che interessano i ragazzi, ecco, perché se sono interessati sono anche più invogliati a mettersi lì a cercare di capire. Quindi sicuramente, adesso mi viene in mente una cosa particolare, una persona molto, molto appassionata di viaggi, quindi piano piano, diciamo, alzando sempre un pochino il livello, siamo passati dai video di National Geographic Kids, quindi molto semplici, poi un passettino in più, un passettino in più, un passettino in più. Certo è che le certificazioni, soprattutto l'IELTS dove si sente una volta sola e quindi non c'è possibilità di replica, sono molto challenging da questo punto di vista. Sicuramente qui è una questione anche molto di abitudine e fare veramente un piccolo gradino per volta. Potrà essere frustrante perché diciamo è lungo e molto spalmato nel tempo, però nel mio piccolo è quello che ho visto funzionare meglio, ecco. E magari lo so che è un compito ulteriormente che grava su tutto quello che già facciamo noi, ma dare compiti differenziati. Quindi se c'è chi ha più bisogno di fare listening e allora magari sullo stesso tema il compito per quel ragazzo sarà listening, se c'è chi ha più bisogno di fare writing, il compito su quel tema di quell'unità sarà writing. Certo è che questo richiede poi un grande lavoro extra da parte nostra, prima per cercare tutte le cose diverse e poi per correggere tutte le cose diverse che sono state fatte.
Silvia, per cui il listening anche di tipologie, diciamo, di cioè di accenti e inglesi differenti, cioè che si abituino non solo a sentire, diverse difficoltà, ma dal punto di vista del testo, ma anche proprio dal punto di vista della
Sì,
tipologia di
sì,
inglese.
assolutamente sì. Per questo, per esempio, l'ultima applicazione, quella delle radio, è molto utile, però mi rendo conto che il livello sia molto alto, però assolutamente sì, anche perché come abbiam visto dall'Invalsi dell'anno scorso, ci sono anche, diverse tipologie di accento, ecco, non solo diverse difficoltà.
Mh-mh.
Però online veramente si trova il mondo e tutte le risorse che io molte di più, anzi io ne ho scelte solo alcune di quelle che uso, di cui so dire qualcosa, ecco, che ho provato sulla mia pelle, ma tutto quello che voi vedete nelle slide c'è sul sito del Consiglio d'Europa la sezione lingue. Quindi c'è tutta una parte dedicata allora è molto facile trovarlo, basta digitare su Google Consiglio d'Europa, sezione lingue, ma se non riuscite a trovarlo potete digitare European Day of Languages e il primo sito che si apre è quello del Consiglio d'Europa che pubblicizza giustamente la Giornata Europea delle Lingue. Da lì c'è tutta una sezione dedicata agli insegnanti, con tutte le, possibili applicazioni, strategie, siti internet gratuito, son solo gratuiti quelli che sono messi lì su quel sito, che si possono utilizzare in classe per diverse tipologie, diverse necessità, ecco. Quindi lì ci sono davvero tantissime risorse.
Bene. Ha catturato notevole attenzione, Bookflix. Mi si chiede qui se è una online page oppure un paper, un board fatto di paper o un digital one, cioè ha
No, allora
incuriosito molto l'oggetto anche.
sicuramente si può fare digital, si può fare online, si può fare io ho scelto di non farlo digitale perché in un momento in cui siamo, diciamo inondati dal digitale, ho scelto di farlo proprio è un supporto di quelli di sughero coperto da dei cartoni del cartoncino marrone, abbiamo fatto una sorta di cornicetta proprio come quella di Netflix.
Mh-mh.
Devo dire, infatti l'ho ripetuto 2 o 3 volte, è stato inaspettato, cioè mai avrei pensato che sarebbero stati così coinvolti. L'inizio è molto semplice, cioè si insegna come scrivere una review, e loro partendo dai libri che leggono normalmente per quelli che do io di inglese, quelli che danno le colleghe di italiano, di francese, di spagnolo, li ho lasciati tendenzialmente liberi, anzi per la seconda lingua a volte hanno scritto la review anche nella seconda lingua, nel caso fosse necessario, fare pratica anche nell'altra lingua. E ogni settimana, ogni 2 settimane, ecco, si possono spostare i libri a seconda del gradimento, no, e anche loro di solito prendono un libro, lo spostano sui trend del momento, piuttosto che sui suggerimenti e anche i colleghi possono partecipare, scrivendo una review di qualche libro che vorrebbero consigliare. Capita raramente, questo devo dirlo, capita raramente, ma c'è anche chi ha voglia di leggere in classe, ha voglia di leggere un libro nuovo, non sa cosa scegliere, va lì, guarda cosa c'è, legge la review, se la cosa interessa, allora magari se lo legge anche per conto suo, senza essere obbligato da qualcuno di noi.
È appena arrivata un'altra domanda. I docenti possono vedere gli iscritti inviati dai ragazzi al sito Write and Improve con o relativi commenti ricevuti?
Allora bisogna fare l'upgrade. No, io di solito chiedo di fare lo screenshot e di mandarlo.
Vabbè.
E lì è molto bello anche perché, c'è un grafico, una volta che uno ha fatto 2 o 3 perché bisogna registrarsi, ma è gratis. Si può fare anche senza registrarsi, ma questo grafico non compare. Se uno si registra, c'è questo grafico che, fa vedere il progresso. Quindi, c'è un numero corrispondente allo scritto, quindi numero 1 sarà lo scritto il primo scritto inviato dallo studente, 2 il secondo e così via, che fa vedere proprio se lo studente all'interno del livello scelto sta progredendo oppure sta regredendo, ecco. E il feedback è dato, a seconda del livello, sulla l'ortografia, la sintassi, la grammatica.
Perfetto. Allora, vediamo se ci arriva qualche altra domanda, l'ultimo. Mh. Per il momento non abbiamo altre. Ehm, direi no, non abbiamo più domande Silvia, per cui tante grazie veramente
Grazie a
e
voi.
Grazie anche a chi ha partecipato oggi ci si rivedrà al prossimo incontro di Le Lingue Live. Grazie ancora a tutti, buonasera.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.